extent of these strikes? How long will they continue? What are the targets? What are they going to hit in Iran? Because Iran has said that any attack on its territory is going to culminate in a regional protracted crisis, and that is something which we will have to wait and see, because there was a suggestion earlier on that there could be a limited strike option that was rumored between Iran and the United States. And Iran had ruled that out completely, because Iran does not want to go into a war of attrition. It has already seen what happens when Tehran and other provinces are hit simultaneously over and over again by the United States, as its military capabilities and its leadership is targeted. This, according to Iran, ahead of these strikes, will be seen as an existential threat, and Iran will go out all out on war and use all its assets. And you have to realize that this is a government where earlier you heard threats against the supreme leader. The government said that it is ready for martyrdom. This is a strategy of Iran, that they are going to continue to fight rather than back down. So we'll have to wait and see on how these strikes unfold. How long do they continue? What was the extent of the US and Israel's cooperation? And how does Iran strike back?
Osama, thank you very much. It's gone past 7:16 a.m. GMT. That's 46 a.m. in Tehran. And a reminder of our breaking news story on Al Jazeera. If you're just joining us, the US and Israel have launched an attack on Iran. Israel called it a preventative attack on Tehran. Smoke and explosions are being reported in and around the Iranian capital, Tehran. They're now also being seen and heard in other parts of the country. The attack began around 9:20 GMT, 6:20 GMT, I should say, and a U.S. official telling Al Jazeera that the United States is not participating in those strikes. Explosions heard in Tehran, as we've said, but also in Isfahan, in Qom, Karaj, and Kermanshah, according to the Iranian news agency Fars. Let's go to our correspondent on the ground in Tehran, Mohammed Val. Mohammed, what's the latest from where you are? What are you hearing?
We are here in the northwestern part of Tehran. That's our location here of the office, and we are talking about explosions that have been taking place. It's been a while now, since 9:45 this morning. Several explosions have been heard across the capital, Tehran. Let me tell you that until now we do not have any official statement from the Iranian government, but we have lots of lines from the Fars news agencies, which is an official source, of course, of information. And it has been talking about strikes not only in Tehran, but also in several other cities, including Qom, which is not far from the capital, Tehran, and also Isfahan at the center of the country, and Kermanshah. Another important Iranian city. The news lines talk about strikes on one of the most important airports in Tehran, in Iran itself, the second most important, and also near the presidential palace. That district is called Pastor. It's very important. That's where some of the government institutions are, even including the presidential palace. But so far, we do not have any confirmation or any lines, any information about any high-ranking officials being killed in this attack. There are reports of people who have been wounded there in the Pastor area, and they are being evacuated to the hospitals. And also there is a little bit of chaos behind me in the streets. There is a very, very interesting traffic jam here. That gives an indication about the panic in the streets of Tehran. Several locations, as I said, in Tehran have been targeted, including near the University of Tehran, and also some of the other important streets. The information is still gloomy, but we get more from outside Tehran than from outside Iran than from inside Iran itself, because the Israelis have been talking about several attacks. Some of the sources in Israel talking about more than 30 attacks. Other sources talk about 3 major targets in Iran, and probably some targeting high-ranking officials. But as I said, there is no confirmation of that. We are in this situation here, and we don't know yet, as anybody else, whether this is going to be a one-off until a reaction comes from Iran, or there will be a continuation. I understand, or I know even, that there was some time between the first explosions and the second wave of explosions, about half an hour. So we do not know if that's going to be a pattern, and if we're going to see more attacks later today, even if Iran hasn't yet reacted or hasn't yet attacked back, or this is going to be just one attack to see what's the reaction in Iran. The officials, the American officials, Israeli officials have been actually talking about this. Israel is starting first, but also we know that it has been a joint operation between the two countries. But the fact that Israel has been the first to announce that it has launched these attacks is very interesting. It corroborates what has been reported during the last few days, that the American plan, the American-Israeli plan, is that Israel attacks first, and if there is a huge reaction from Iran, then the Americans have to intervene to protect their ally Israel. And that's probably going to be the beginning of a much longer, much more protruded attack on Iran to either compel the Iranians to give up their nuclear program, or probably regime change. Lots of those things have been talked about. We don't know specifically.
Yeah, this
Still
just happened
listening
in like the last 45
for more
minutes.
details from all the sides.
And waiting to see how Iran will respond. Of course, Mohammed Vali in Tehran for the moment. Thank you, Mohammed, describing panic and chaos on the streets of Tehran as Iran comes under attack from the US and Israel. It was Israel first that announced that it had hit Iran. Explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran.
Israel and the US just struck
Iranian media
Iran.
reporting that the attacks happened nationwide as Israel first announced launching these airstrikes. They are against Iran, and according to a U.S. official who's been speaking to the Reuters news agency, the strikes were launched by air and by sea, and several ministries in southern Tehran have been targeted. Our correspondent on the ground there bringing us the latest on the situation. We'll keep a close eye, of course, on what's happening inside Iran. But also earlier on Saturday morning, Israel carried out airstrikes in southern Lebanon. The Israeli army says it targeted Hezbollah military infrastructure in the Iqlim al-Tufa region. The attacks are the latest breach, of course, of a ceasefire which is agreed between Lebanon and Israel in late 2024. Zaina Khadr is in Beirut for us. We've seen these Israeli attacks on Lebanon regularly in the last year since the ceasefire was agreed. But is this latest one related to what's happening in Iran right now, Zaina?
Well, it is not being seen as an isolated incident. The timing, roughly an hour before the Israeli military carried out what is called preventative strikes in Tehran.
Preventative
the
strikes,
Israeli
my
Air
ass.
Force carrying out a series of attacks in southern Lebanon in the Iqlim al-Tufah region. This is a mountainous region, a very strategic region in southern Lebanon. Yes, they've hit it time and time again over the past year or so, despite that ceasefire. But like I said, in the past few days, there's been an escalation, a pattern of escalation. On Thursday night, for example, the Israeli army carried out a wave of airstrikes in the east of the country in the Bekaa area, an area where the Israeli military believes is the operational base of Hezbollah, a place where Hezbollah keeps its strategic weapons, whether they are long-range weapons, precision-guided weapons, drone manufacturing facilities, weapons depots, and it believes Iqlim al-Tufah also is where Hezbollah has strategic weapons. So this escalation of attacks really has caused a lot of concern in Lebanon that the country could be dragged into a potential conflict, which is now happening between Israel, Iran, and the United States, because Hezbollah being Iran's strategic and ideological ally. So these attacks are being seen as preventive attacks to limit the possibility of Hezbollah responding if it chooses to do so, because that in itself is another question.
Zaina, of course, Hezbollah has been considerably weakened since its conflict.
Listen, it's called connecting, and it's insane. I don't do schedules or timesheets.
It's getting real. You know, it's getting real. The question is, how long is this war gonna fucking last? I think it's do or die for Iran. I think it's do or die for Iran. So even if they lose, they're not going out without a fight. There's no way. There's no way.
For Hezbollah to get involved. Israeli intelligence assessments say that they believe Hezbollah still has an arsenal of missiles that it is able to use, but they will not pose any existential threat to Israel, a much more superior army. And Hezbollah also knows that if it does get involved in this conflict, it could trigger a harsh response by the Israeli army and its people, its constituency, its supporters. They will pay the price. Israel could carry out dozens of airstrikes in Beirut's southern suburbs, causing even more devastation, causing more displacement. There's still tens of thousands displaced by the late 2024 conflict. So very difficult decisions. A few weeks ago, Hezbollah Secretary General said, and he was speaking during an event in solidarity with Iran, he said, as far as how we would act, those are the details. The battle itself will determine. We are expecting to hear from Hezbollah Secretary General in a few hours' time. This was a scheduled address, but no doubt he will have to comment on the latest developments and the strikes on Iran.
Zena Khodr in Beirut, thank you very much for now. We will, of course, check in regularly with you to find out the latest there from Lebanon. If you're just joining us on Al Jazeera, we're bringing you extensive coverage of this breaking news story. Israel and the United States have attacked Iran. This happened about an hour or so ago. Explosions were heard in the Iranian capital, Tehran, as well as in Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, and Kermanshah. Israel announced that it was launching a preemptive attack on Iran, and some 20 minutes later, the U.S. announced that it was also involved in that attack. Iranian media reporting that the attacks are happening nationwide as Israel launched these airstrikes, but now Tehran saying also that it's preparing for retaliation and that the response will be crushing. We have extensive coverage, as I said. Diplomatic editor James Bays is here with us on set. Ali Hashim, who's covered Iran extensively, is also with us. We have our chief U.S. correspondent in Washington, D.C., Alan Fisher, as well as Zena Khodr in Beirut. And various guests will be analyzing and reacting to the news as we get the latest developments. Let's bring in Alan Fisher in Washington for now. Alan, tell us what's the latest from Washington, D.C. The U.S. Confirming that it is also involved in this attack on Iran. What's the extent of its involvement?
Well, I've been texting with someone who surprisingly is awake at 2 in the morning because they also heard of the attacks on Tehran. They seem to suggest that they believe that the United States' involvement in this is towards decapitating the head of the Iranian regime. They say that from what they can understand, the attacks were concentrated in areas where the supreme leader may well be living. And so the intention was to try and take out the head of the regime and then see what would happen afterwards. Now, many countries have warned the United States about an extended effort to try and force regime change in Iran. They wanted to know what was the plan for the day after and the day after that and the day after that, simply because you couldn't guarantee that if you removed the supreme leader, that necessarily what would happen would that a pro-Western, pro-United States government form in his absence. And so there could be a great deal of bloodshed in the aftermath, and they were concerned that that would leak over borders, that that would cause instability across the region, and they would be dragged into a regional war of some description.
Well, we're not going to go to war with Iran. We have a lot of problems here in America. We're not going to go to war with Iran. Can you believe this? They want us to go to war. On second thought, we're going to go to war with Iran.
So it may well be that the United States' involvement in this was limited to intelligence, but given the size of the U.S. military buildup in the region, there's every possibility that American hardware, American service personnel was also used.
Alan, thank you for now. Ali Hashim, you've covered Iran extensively. If, as Alan said, the objective of this particular attack is to decapitate the head of the Iranian regime, the supreme leader, how difficult of a mission is that?
Well, it's clear from the locations where we saw these attacks are on that the main objective is not just decapitation, but even hitting the command and control in the country. So hitting Pasteur Street, where the presidency is, and the Supreme National Security Council, hitting the surroundings of the leader's house and the Assembly of Experts. So it's not only decapitation, but also preventing the Iranians from going towards the plan B, if there's a plan B. Now,
but presumably the Iranians would have prepared for such a scenario.
Now, just in case there is a second plan and a third plan and a fourth plan, and this is what we've been hearing from the Iranians, that there are several contingency plans, given the fact they've already seen this. This is a deja vu moment that they've seen on the 13th of June. Now,
but then, were they going directly after the Supreme Leader in June of last year?
Well, there were 3 attempts on the Supreme Leader's life in the June war, but they failed. There was an attack on the Supreme National Security Council convening, including the president, the parliament speaker, ministers of intelligence, all the main actors in the Iranian decision-making process. And this also failed, but they were able to hit the command and control in the military, mainly the commanders of the army and the IRGC.
He has donors to make happy, you know?
Even if this succeeded, even if they were able to kill the Supreme Leader, will this mean that the establishment in Iran is going to collapse? This is a very complicated web of influence and also of councils that is made so that even if the head is gone, it's going to be it's not going to be an immediate collapse, or it won't collapse directly.
An Iranian official now saying that Tehran is preparing for retaliation, Ali, and that the response will be crushing. What might the response look like?
Well, we know the main asset the Iranians have is their ballistic missiles. And actually, this is one of the issues that the Americans and the Israelis wanted on the table.
And the Iranian didn't want it on the negotiating
absolutely.
table.
Because they knew that the moment they are going to give up their ballistic missiles, then they are going to be open for any attack. And also, besides that, they have their own drone program that was tested in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine by the Russians. So these are 2 main military assets that they might be using. Also, there is a possibility that they might be activating the region, their own presence in the region.
Their proxies in the region, like the Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen, of course. But
regardless of the situation right now of Hezbollah or the Iraqis or the Houthis, because each has their own local calculations. But now, if this is heading towards an existential threat for the Islamic Republic, then this whole axis is under existential threat.
Yeah.
So it depends how this is going to move on.
Right. James Bays, this U.S.-Israel attack on Iran coming as there was cautious optimism that diplomacy could work. We saw the 3rd round of negotiations in Geneva. The Omani foreign minister in Washington saying that he was, optimistic that they could come up with some sort of a deal. And even Donald Trump saying that even if he wasn't happy with what the outcome of the talks in Geneva was, that he still hoped that there could be a deal. And yet, here we are, an attack on Iran. Where does that leave diplomacy and the negotiation?
And I think those comments from the Oman foreign minister are very important, because that interview he gave just a few hours ago in the US, and he doesn't talk very much in public, saying we made a breakthrough in these talks. They're no longer going to stockpile enriched uranium. This is something that was never in the previous JCPOA, the Obama deal of 2015. And you have that soundbite, which will be played on breakfast shows in a few hours' time in the US, at the same time as they've launched this attack. And I think there is a problem here for Donald Trump. He has not prepared the world, and particularly his public, for war. This is the biggest armada that's been gathered in the Middle East since 2003 and the attack then. Well, I remember 2003, we had the war, the invasion of Afghanistan, and from days after that, he was preparing the ground, George W. Bush, for the attack on Iraq. They were getting the American people ready. Go all the way back 35 years ago, 1990, and the war again, the Americans attacking Iraq. They built a 42-nation coalition.
Right.
Nothing like that. In fact, I think many Americans, when they hear about this in the morning, when they wake up in a few hours' time, are going to be spluttering on their cornflakes as they hear what's happened.
Well, I understand that.
How long do you guys think this war will last? crazy, man. This could be like the World War III. This could be World War III. It could end tomorrow, or it could be World War III. You know, honestly. I don't think Iran is going to go out without a fight. It's not going to happen. They're not going down without a fight. It's not going to happen. It has nothing to do with them being a military foothold in the Middle East. America has plenty of allies in the Middle East. They have army bases in Jordan. They have army bases in Iraq, Saudi Arabia. They have a million other fucking army bases in the Middle East. They don't need a military foothold through Israel. That's one little tiny ass fucking country. You know, Israel holds power over American politicians. They pay them. They blackmail them through agents like Jeffrey Epstein, as we saw with the Epstein files, etc., etc. But also, it's like their Christian Zionism, bro. It's the Christian Zionism in America. That's why America's, you know, yeah. Anyway, subscribe to your boy. Subscribe, follow me. I'm gonna be streaming more. Reborn.vids is my Instagram. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.
Which may explain why we're seeing the attacks in southern Lebanon over the last couple of hours by the Israelis against what they describe as Hezbollah targets in that region. But Donald Trump saying that no other U.S. president has taken this sort of action against Iran. It was only him that did it. That, of course, is the split personality almost of Donald Trump, who boasts about solving somewhere in the region of 8 wars, but then has launched attacks against a number of countries. And this is the second time in, 6-7 months that he's launched an attack on Iran. And of course, he's making the point that this was an attack particularly to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. He's talking now about Midnight Hammer. I'm listening to this as I'm playing it out to you, obviously, and trying to decipher exactly what he's saying.
We'll let you listen to it.
He talked about Midnight Hammer.
Yeah, we'll let you go and listen to it and come back to you when you get more. In the meantime, we are showing our viewers here live pictures of the skies over Tel Aviv, and there's been an explosion in Tel Aviv in just the last few minutes. We saw just a few seconds ago on the right-hand side of the screen, if you can go back to it a little bit, smoke, black smoke billowing there over the sky in Tel Aviv. Israel, as it announced the attack on Iran, also declared a state of emergency and closed its airspace. It protectively sounded air raids, sirens across the country, preparing for any missiles launch in a retaliation for its attack on Iran. Akiva Eldar is joining us from Tel Aviv. He's a political analyst, a regular contributor to Al Jazeera. Akiva, can you tell us right now, if you're able to, what's happening in Tel Aviv? Because we've seen an explosion there, it seems, in just the last few minutes.
Well, since the alarm came out this morning, the streets are empty. It's Shabbat, so very slow transportation, and people at home. They
said he doesn't talk it.
In Israel.
Hezbollah and the Houthi.
the previous JCPOA, the Obama deal of 2015.
Hezbollah or the
The previous
against Iran, but then has launched attacks against a number of countries, and this is the second time in what 6-7 months that he's launched an attack on Iran. And of course, he's making the point that this was an attack particularly to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon. He's talking now about Midnight Hammer.
So it looks
I'm
like
listening to
Iran's
this
already
and playing it
swinging
out
back.
to you, obviously, and trying to decipher
that's an actual explosion.
exactly what he's saying.
We'll let
But
you listen
he
to
talked
it.
about Midnight Hammer.
Yeah, we'll let you go and listen to it and come back to you when you get more. In the meantime, we are showing our viewers here live pictures of the skies over Tel Aviv, and there's been an explosion in Tel Aviv in just the last few minutes. We saw just a few seconds ago on the right-hand side of the screen, if you can go back to it a little bit, smoke, black smoke billowing there over the...
Is stress. It's ninth largest country.
I think you forced Donald Trump's hand and that he couldn't really.
Do not take tougher sanctions because of that.
Let me just refresh it.
This records conversations
Oh,
better
this
than taking
dumbass
notes
ad,
ever
right?
could.
We're not trying to hear that shit.
If there's a ceasefire there, there's still effectively a war going on in Gaza. Is Israel prepared to be fighting right now on another front? Are Israelis prepared to be dragged into another conflict?
Yeah, the majority of the Israeli public, the Jewish Israeli, believes that there is no other way, that we are doomed to live on our sword and wait for the Messiah. Especially the young voters who actually were born into this situation. They know only Netanyahu and his agenda. And the word peace is hardly heard in the public discourse. And we see in the public polls that a diplomatic settlement between the U.S. and the Iranian was a nightmare for many people. This was the message that is coming from the highest echelons, including the Israeli military. Israel is Sparta, and in Sparta you get used to this. So we don't believe that there is an alternative. For Netanyahu to alter the discourse
You're gonna join the
from
draft,
the
Ben Whitney?
massacre in Gaza,
What are ways to avoid
and
the draft?
the thousands of Israelis that were killed in this terrible, was another Saturday and holiday. For him, this is a gift, not talking about his trial, about corruption, about the exemption of the Orthodox youngsters from serving in the military.
Akiva, your sound is breaking up there, unfortunately. We're going to leave you for a few minutes. We'll come back to you, of course, and check in regularly with you there in Tel Aviv. U.S. President Donald Trump, in just the last few minutes, announcing and confirming that the United States has begun major combat operations in Iran. President Trump says they're doing this because Iran is developing long-range missiles
I don't know, I might just go to the war instead.
And others in the region. Let's listen to President Trump.
Anymore. So that's the IRGC, which also, as you know, especially the besiege element of the IRGC has been used to oppress the protesters. So those are the kinds of things that I would expect to see would be the options the president will be looking at going after if the Iranians did negotiate. I also don't think his objective would be an all-out.
Okay, apologies for that. We will try to sort out that clip from President
We just
Trump,
bombed
which he posted
Iran
on his Truth Social just a short while ago, confirming the beginning of operations against Iran. President Trump says these are major combat operations. We've seen strikes on Iran in the last 2 hours or so, including on the capital, Tehran. Let's go to Mohammed Val, who's in the Iranian capital for us. Mohammed, bring us the latest from where you are. What is the situation? What's been targeted? And any information that you have on this would be appreciated.
Sorry, I will just adjust my position. Yes, we haven't been hearing much from the government side But police has just issued a statement saying that although there is a major cyber attack on Iranian side, things are under control and they are managing the situation. So those explosions took place at 9:45 this morning, and there were two waves at least that we heard here in Tehran, with an interval of about 40 minutes in between. We don't know whether this is going to continue throughout the day, and probably we have
Guys,
just heard,
subscribe
since
to
we
me
have
if you
just heard
haven't.
from
Follow
President
me.
Trump that it is going to
Hit
be
the follow
probably
button.
a sustained campaign. So I mean,
Follow me on my
what
socials.
is expected. The targets are several. Some of them are in Tehran, including the Pastor district, which is where some of the strategic locations.
They want greater Israel, bro. They're attacking Iran because Iran is the only country in the Middle East that really threatens them. But they're getting America to do it for them. You know, they're dragging America into it. Thank you, Jason. W. Jason. Man, this is crazy, bro. How you guys feeling about this? I have mixed feelings, man.
Kermanshah. These cities have been targeted by explosions, by missiles particularly. They said missiles. We know that it is a joint operation between Israel and the United States. Lots of reports coming from Israel about places targeted or probably people targeted, but until now we are in a total blackout with regards to official reports from the Tehran government, for the Iran government, if there is anybody hurt. And also we're hearing that the revolutionary the guide of the revolution, the supreme leader of the revolution, Khamenei, is not in Tehran. He has been transferred to a secure location. As I mentioned earlier, there is a little bit of panic in the streets. There is a little bit of traffic jams, so people are really apprehending and feeling that this might get worse. Until now, the only report I said is from the police saying that the situation is under control. And we don't know whether the government here is deciding on major reaction. We've heard about that explosion in Tel Aviv, but people are listening and expecting more regarding
that explosion in Tel Aviv, which we saw. Is there any indication that Iran is behind that? Presumably, the Iranians would have prepared for this attack and also prepared a response to any attack on their soil.
Well, we've been hearing the Iranian officials over the last few days saying that they are ready for peace, but also ready for war, and that there's going to be a reaction equal to the action, and that this time around there is not going to be any compromise with regards to the defense of Iran, also to sending messages to its enemies that any attack on Iran will be reciprocated.
We're going to kick off 4 CSV agents in parallel to edit each one of these files. The big idea here is that after every one of these agents run, they're going to validate the file they just operated in. This is going to run after my build agent runs every single time. So when the agent finishes, it's going to look over all the code here only when the build agent runs, right? So we're not running commands when we don't need them. We run them in specific use cases. This is where this gets really powerful. Imagine you're doing a migration. Imagine you're updating some fields in the database. Imagine you're doing any type of work that you yourself would come in and validate. You can now
by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members in Iraq. The regime's proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been
International
mass
shipping
terror,
lanes.
and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts.
Blood and guts.
It was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our citizens hostage. It was brutal, something like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They've rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore. Instead, they attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland. Just imagine how emboldened this regime would be if they ever had and actually were armed with nuclear weapons as a means to deliver their message. For these reasons, the United States military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future.
They often happen in war.
Mission. We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail. To the members of
And
the
they will
Islamic
prevail.
Revolutionary Guard, the armed forces, and all of the police, I say tonight that you must lay down your weapons and have complete immunity.
Let's see what that
or, in
happens,
the
how that works
alternative,
out.
face certain death.
You think Iran's
So,
going to do that?
lay
Lay down their
your
weapons?
arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death. Finally, to the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass. May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all. Thank you.
There you have it. U.S. President Donald Trump announcing
It sounds like a
the
declaration
US
of war to
has
me.
begun major combat operations in Iran after Israel said earlier that it had launched missile attacks against Iran. President Trump there making a number of statements which we're going to analyze with our chief U.S. correspondent Alan Fisher in Washington. But just to remind our viewers of what's happened, again, multiple attacks on Iran, multiple explosions heard in Iran's capital, Tehran, while blasts were also reported in other cities and other locations across the country. Alan Fisher, to what President Trump has just said in that 8-minute video he posted on Truth Social, what is the objective of this operation from President Trump, and how long is it going to last?
The United States has once again set the table for a revolution in Iran. They've done it before. This time, they're doing it with weapons and bombs rather than covertly through the CIA.
Rather than
It's clear that this
covertly.
is going to be a continuous military operation. Donald Trump accepting the fact that there may be casualties, saying that it's something that you have to accept in war, and urging the Iranian people to sit tight for the moment, but then to seize control of their government. One thing he said, of course, was that the Republican Guard and also the police should lay down their weapons. If they do so, they'll be treated fairly. But if they don't, he said, you will face almost certain death. So this is clearly not just a one-and-done sort of operation. This is what everyone was concerned about for a number of months with the huge US military buildup in the Gulf. This is about regime change in Iran. There will be those close to Donald Trump, like Lindsey Graham, who will be delighted about this, who's been pushing for it for years. But there'll be many who will be deeply concerned that Donald Trump has effectively launched a war in Iran without seeking congressional approval. We don't even know if he's informed Congress that this was going
That's
to
a good
take
point,
place.
Matthew Rompa.
This was Donald Trump saying,
That's a good
we
point.
have tolerated what Iran has done over a number of years, and now no more. Interestingly, coming as they were negotiating with Iran about their nuclear program, and the Omani negotiator appeared on American television just a few hours ago to say that the Iranians had agreed that they would no longer process enough material to build a nuclear bomb, that was a significant concession on their part, that they were moving towards an agreement. They had the heart of an agreement. Donald Trump said he wasn't pleased with the Iranians, but he hadn't made a decision. That was just a few hours ago as well. Clearly the decision was made, and the United States has decided to launch a war on Iran.
Alan, just briefly, how long do we expect this operation to last?
Of course, we have no idea of telling that. We have no idea what the targets are. We know that the United States will have significant intelligence from Iran. We know that they're working hand in hand with the Israelis. What they will be preparing for now is the backlash. We already saw that with the evacuation of some embassies around the region when non-essential staff were told that they should leave, and they should leave now. That suggests that perhaps, as Donald Trump was saying, he hadn't made a decision. The wind was moving in the direction of an attack. Of course, there'll be allies in the region who'll be concerned, particularly about the idea of regime change. We remember, if you go back to the original Iranian Revolution in the 70s, there was a real possibility for a short period of time after Ayatollah Khomeini returned to the country that people described as radical Islamists may well take over the country. They were eventually defeated. But there is no guarantee there is a clear path for whoever may take over the Iranian government now. It throws up all sorts of levels of uncertainty, something Donald Trump has criticized others for, particularly when it came to the war in Iraq, and it appears
I'll be back tomorrow.
he's now
Subscribe to
walking
me.
into a similar
Thank you very much for
situation
joining.
himself.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much.
I appreciate you guys for showing up. Hit the subscribe button. We'll be back soon. I have updates on my Instagram. Appreciate you all.